The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Marc Webb directs this movie yet again. It brings the two main cast members back. Andrew Garfield is back as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Emma Stone comes back playing Gwen Stacy as the love interest. And this movie introduces new villains and different challenges for Peter to face, like relationship problems with Gwen Stacy specifically. We get the Electro is now introduced in this movie. Rhino is also now on the loose, and also Harry Osborn is in this movie, and he's got some issues to deal with as well. This did not go well. This movie should be lauded as one of the worst superhero movies ever made. There is not very many positive things I could say about this movie whatsoever. So let's just get that stuff out the way first. Some of the action was okay to look at. There were some cool shots that they did with Spider-Man swinging through the city, and some cool shots during some of his fights when he's swinging around with Electro. I did enjoy some of that stuff. The costume looks better than the first movie. It's probably third or fourth favorite version of the costume that I've seen. And, Andrew Garfield is likable as Spider-Man. And unfortunately, this is where the stuff kind of ends, and everything else in this movie just doesn't, go to par. Let's get one thing straight first. The sole reason this movie fails on every aspect is the direction and the writing of this movie. There is not a single reason this movie could have been saved, even with some good camera work, even with some fine performances if it had some more. The script is the one thing in this movie that just drags it to hell. It is so shitty. It is awful. If I was given this and told, hey, can we greenlight this and make this a movie, I would spit in their face, throw it back at them, and tell them to rethink this, or maybe rethink a career, because this script is awful. One of the major issues with this movie is the amount of plot that is there, much like Spider-Man 3, except Spider-Man 3 is actually crafted a little bit better than this, is the sheer amount of storylines that it introduces and how long it drops some, how long you forget things, how long it just doesn't give the time of day to a lot of points in this story. The beginning of this movie introduces Peter Parker's parents again from the first one, and we get a little bit more from the interaction that they had before they ended up leaving Peter with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And then we get a really shitty looking fight scene in an airplane where Peter's dad sends files to some secret, place, and that's all we get. There's really nothing new about Peter Parker's parents in this movie. There really isn't. And it's such a shame that the first movie was based off of stuff like this, and then we get in the second movie and it's really not brought up much at all. So on top of the sheer dumb and idiocy of that part of the storyline of this movie, we also get the annoying and repetitive nature of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy on again, off again, because Peter can't handle being in a relationship because of Captain Stacy's wishes, even though he completely ignored those wishes almost instantly after the last movie ended. And this just causes for some awkward tension throughout the entire movie with the characters, more awkward banter that I absolutely hated, and it's just one of the worst couple attractions I've seen in a superhero movie. Like, the Gwen Stacy storyline could work. It could. But the way that they show it in these two movies did not work for me. And not to mention, the origin story for these villains is not good. Paul Giamatti plays Rhino at the beginning of the movie, and there's, wanton destruction at the beginning of this movie as Peter's trying to tell jokes while he knocks on the guy's window and trying to stop the car from speeding through the street and killing a bunch of people. After that, you don't see him until the end of the movie. And then, along with that, you get a slight introduction with Max Dillon, who is Electro, but he's kind of sidelined for a little bit to make room for the Peter Parker love interest stuff. And then when he's brought back into it, He becomes Electro because he falls into a vat of eels and the electricity fixes the gap in his teeth. And I'm sure that the only person that really enjoyed that scene was Michael Strahan, thinking, man, I gotta fucking find some pit of eels to go to right now. It's just lazy stuff like that that just really pissed me off. Because then the only reason why that Electro even goes bad is because when he gets to Times Square and he finds good electricity to kind of, be a part of, like, he's on the television and everyone notices is him. And then when Spider-Man shows up, the TVs go on him. So it's really awful. It's just not a good way to show Electro, because his motive is that he's jealous of Spider-Man getting attention on the TV screen, when that really wasn't his thing. He just wanted to be respected by his peers. He just didn't want to be treated like shit. And getting fame and being looked at all weird on TV screens just doesn't equate. And on top of that as well, you get arguably the worst villain in this entire movie with Harry Osborn. Harry is introduced early on in the movie, roughly, and he goes visits his father, and his father is dying of the Osborn curse. Because we never saw the man in the first movie, so now we have to see him in this movie, and he tells him that he has it too. And the only reason he's here is to show that him and Peter had a relationship before he left boarding school. Now, the worst part about this too is to make the audience go, they were friends the entire time. Nothing is completely wrong here with the friendship that they have, because they never established it in the first movie. In the first movie, we see Peter walking through Oscorp and sneaking into Oscorp to try to talk to Dr. Connors. If you knew the heir to the Osborn, name and the company, why are you sneaking into this? Don't you have a phone number you can call? It's just so dumb the way that they pace this stuff, because really, the whole Harry Osborn part of this is what makes this entire movie start to fall apart in the end, because Harry ends up, he has the infection with the Osborn curse, and he's dying at such a rapid rate, not like his father dying at a much, later stage of his life. No, Harry is dying right now. So he finds out in secret files and stuff about the spiders that were created in the labs that he had, and because, Spider-Man was somehow bitten by this, creature, that he has the ability to self-heal. The only time this is ever mentioned in any Spider-Man movie, the self-heal aspect of it. It's in comics somewhere, but it's never established in these movies, because guess what? If you give him the thing of self-heal, what's stopping Spider-Man? We just saw in the same movie that Peter Parker, in a nice montage of him through the year after he breaks up with Gwen Stacy, he's getting sick and buying cough syrup and stuff like that. It's not like he's immune to everything. And then when Harry isn't offered the opportunity to have the blood, he then gets pissed at Spider-Man. And then, Peter goes back to his home and is pissed about all the stuff with his parents on how that they were shitty people, because Aunt May tells him that they weren't really good people and they were trying to run away from Oscorp. So when he gets mad, he throws his dad's old calculator to the wall. And what happens to be in the calculator but a bunch of fucking train coins? So they uplift some old-ass subway system that should not feasibly work in this scenario. But for whatever reason, he puts a few coins in, a subway pops up from underneath the ground. It's an old laboratory from his dad's where all of his stuff is, where it's just an exposition dump of basically being this was basically Peter's destiny to become Spider-Man, because the DNA of the spiders and, the venom of all that only was compatible with Peter Parker's DNA. What the fuck is this shit? I would personally love to meet the person who thought that that was a great idea. They wrote that on paper or typed it out in their system and went, this is the best case scenario that we can do for this story. Because please, sir, please, ma'am, whoever you are, don't write a movie ever again. Just don't. This is the lamest shit and the dumbest shit I've ever seen in a superhero movie. It just feels so inconvenient. It feels so like just jarring. Like, how is this even a thing? There, it has to happen so specifically that he has to throw these calculators at the wall to get these coins. Logistically, who does that stuff? His dad is banking on the fact that Peter's gonna get pissed at him one day to do that, to find his shit. Come on, man. And the worst part about these villains is the acting is just horrible with them as well. Because Jamie Foxx feels very much like the Riddler with Jim Carrey's version. It's just over the top and comedic, and it's just not good. And then Dane DeHaan's version of Harry is a angsty teen that is just slowly talking and just mellowing on through his emotions and just trying to force a sentence out of his body, and it just doesn't fucking work. And then when somehow Harry finally gets the venom of the secret formula that they had at the bottom of Oscorp's laboratory, and he's infected with it to try to heal himself, it triggers something with him, so he grows like these weird like scales and shit. It looks like herpes all across his body, and he suddenly goes to some weird green tech that he goes to and puts it on, and it just magically helps him heal. He is now the Green Goblin in this film's version of Spider-Man movies. And it's like, how does he know how to work any of this shit? He's barely at Oscorp. How would he know how to do any of this stuff? At least with Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, he created the tech for the Green Goblin suit in that one. It makes sense that he, of all people, if we're to take it, he would know what to do with it. He would know how to operate it. This fucking bozo that just walked into this movie not too long ago shouldn't know jack shit. And then at the end of the movie, you get Gwen Stacy wanting to help Peter because it's her destiny. It's, you know, it's my choice, Peter. I want to be here with the Electric Man exploding grids of, you know, circuits and shit like that, and sparks flying everywhere, and I'm gonna grab metal shit, and it's gonna be a fun time. And when they eventually do beat him, and then they face Green Goblin, they have the coveted Gwen Stacy death where she falls from the bell tower, that if you've read a fucking comic, or you know comics in general, like, you know that that's where they were going with this. You knew that. They showed it in the trailer. They knew. They were banking on you knowing that that's what was going to happen. And it just doesn't come across good. Andrew Garfield being fun in this movie with a few nice montages and a few nice shots of him swinging around the city does not justify this movie getting a great reception whatsoever. I can't for the life of me think why anybody thinks that this movie is good or okay at best. There is very little redeeming about this movie. There is so much hampering this movie, and on top of it all, its worst offense is that it wanted to set up the Sinister Six. It was shot shown in the trailer. It was shot shown at the end of the movie with Harry Osborn saying that the curse kind of comes and goes. It's like something that he can control now for whatever reason, while also talking to this guy in a top hat where he walks through the lab and he sees all like the Vulture's wings, Doc Ock's arms. You see, you know, other tech in there for other people for a movie that will never exist. Ever. This is easily one of the worst superhero movies ever created. It's by far the worst Spider-Man movie ever made. And I just don't understand how it was greenlit. There's so much wrong in these movies. I can't for the life of me understand how and why this exists. I'm going to give The Amazing Spider-Man 2 half a star. There it is. I'm finally done with the two worst aspects of Spider-Man in this series that I'm doing leading up to No Way Home, which in the trailers alone already looks like it far exceeds anything these two movies put together could ever do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon on this channel. You could also look forward to other wrestling reviews that I do on the occasion on the Andrew Paul Show. Links will be down in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to y'all next time.